Now, the other thing that's on your card and is probably worth just unpicking a little bit, because I asked the naive question in the green room. You're a collaborative lawyer and mediator, and I think of mediator and I think relate and relationships, but of course that's not what you do. So mediation in the family law sense has a slightly different meaning. Do you want to unpick that a bit for us?
Yeah, mediation. In the relate sense, it would be if you were trying to hold on to your relationship and trying to work it through. But mediation tends to be where you've already decided that your relationship is over and you feel able to talk to your former partner about financial arrangements, about arrangements for your children. But with my mediator hat on, I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm there as a neutral to help guide people through their own discussions with each other to an outcome that they feel is fair. Now, within that process, obviously, I've got my legal knowledge in my head. So if I feel possibly that one party's not doing so well, or there's a thorny issue that people get stuck on, for example, I inherited £100,000 from Auntie Gertie, and I really don't think it's fair that I share that with you. Mm-hmm. I would know as a lawyer that would be something that each of them should go and get legal advice on. What's the position with Auntie Gertie's inheritance, and did we get it 10 years ago or did we get it last week? So throughout the mediation process, it's sensible to go and take legal advice to check that you're not going completely off-piste with the outcome. Yeah. But again, like collaborative law, although you're giving legal advice within that process, it's a way of people working things through together and not having a bun fight, which can be fairly ghastly for all concerned.
So I think a little light bulb came on when you were talking there. Effectively, mediation, there's three people in the room, the
That's
mediator
right.
and the couple.
Yes.
And collaborative law, there's four people in the room, the couple and their respective supporting
lawyers. Yeah.
Light bulbs come on. I've just understood that. So that must be. So how much mediation do you get involved in? I mean, how common is it for a couple to come and see a single lawyer together?
Well, they're not coming to see a lawyer. They're
right.
not coming to see a lawyer.
Oh,
That's
yes,
the
right.
point.
Yes.
It's increasingly common. I'm doing more mediation work now than I have done before. I think there's a bit of an urban myth, if you like, that people have to go to mediation before they could start the court process.
I think I'd heard something about that.
But in fact, mediation's a voluntary process, and nobody can be forced to go to mediation.
You will mediate, or else there'll be trouble.
Yes, or else you won't sort anything out. But the government brought in a system whereby they wanted to try and keep people out of the courts for the government's reasons. And a way of doing that, they thought, was to persuade people to go to mediation. And so some people listening may have heard of the expression a MIAM, which is...
I haven't.
Well, okay. So a MIAM is a mediation information assessment meeting. So you are encouraged to go and see a mediator to discuss the various alternative ways of resolving your disputes to try and keep you out of the court. But, you can go for a MIAM knowing full well that the other person in the end of the relationship won't go anywhere near mediation because the last thing they want to do is clap eyes on you again. So I think, if I could just dispel that myth, really, that you've got to go to mediation.
I had it in my head that at one stage mediation was a requirement. So obviously, clearly I was wrong.
Well, there you go. But the requirement, there are one or two exceptions to it, is to, before you start an application to resolve finances following the end of a marriage or a civil partnership, or if you want to sort out arrangements for your children because you can't, is to attend a MIAM to find out what are the other ways of sorting out this problem, i.e. mediation, and sometimes there's arbitration.
All right. Well, that actually is really clear. I mean, God, that sounded terribly patronising. It wasn't intended. It is helpful to actually understand it properly, because you hear these things and they become urban myths, and we're on the periphery of this stuff. We often get called in to talk about pension sharing and other bits and pieces that financial advisors we talk to. And I've had people come in saying, I'm thinking about getting divorced. What are the financial consequences? At which point I said, start with the fact it's going to be extraordinarily expensive, whatever you do, and find something else to do if you can. But it's usually a case of then you really need to have a conversation with a lawyer. But perhaps what we ought to start saying is you need to have a conversation with a mediator to see if you're still at this stage of thinking about it, maybe there is some way of better working it through, which would be sensible.
And of course, some people do end up spending a great deal of money on sorting out their financial arrangements, and really that money is actually better off in their pockets.
Yes.
So if you can try and work together to sort things out, at the risk of talking myself out of a job, I think that's better. I mean, you may need assistance from a lawyer along the way, but the fewer pieces you find to argue about, the less you're going to spend.
It sounds to me like you're talking your way into a job, because a lawyer who starts with, there may be, you may actually be better off working this out without me, I'll come in and rubber stamp stuff that you've done, is actually somebody who's thinking about the client's best interests. And that, more than anything else, I think, if I was going for a lawyer, financial advisor or an accountant, is I want to find somebody who's going to support and advise me, who's going to put my interests first, not how much money can I screw out of these poor clients in their difficult situation, when they're probably not always thinking with their heads, more often with their hearts, or the fact that their heart is broken.